Very good. I didn't say anything about the WHO. Did you guys have anything urgent you wanted to add on this?
Well, actually, Del Bigtree was talking about it in his latest show, and what he did say was, yes, the treaty hasn't passed for now, but the IHR amendments have, which are also quite a scary little thing. And I think it was Rogowski is the name of the guy who was going through it quite well. He also said there's a section in there called I think it's section 61 from memory, which does have an opt-out for the countries, but there is a time limit on it. So I think we should all get busy writing to our MPs and senators. So rather than listening to Mark Butler.
Unpopular opinion, but I want to hear from Craig first. What are your thoughts on this?
Just on this, now we argued this case about the last election that this would be made mandatory or binding. Right? So, no, you're all cranks, you're all crazy, you're all conspiracy theorists. Mark Butler, as Australia's health minister, gave a speech before the WHO and said binding treaty. He used the word binding. Now, it may not be technically legally binding in a sense, right? But what will happen, the World Health Organization will make these orders and the government will say, oh, we've got to do it, this is binding on us, So they will tell up front, they'll make the story when they're pressed that, oh, no, it's not binding. They make the comments that it is binding. And I said, when push comes to shove, right, they'll just adopt what the World Health Organization says. So, we have to do this because we've signed the treaty.
Yeah.
And they don't have a great track record of pandemic response, do they? I mean, it was
They
just...
got everything wrong.
They got everything wrong, and they're run by one guy, Tadros, and I'm sorry,
And
the
Gates,
arbiter...
and Bill Gates.
Well, yeah, that too.
Yeah.
He's a lovely person, and I do not have any suicidal thoughts either. But yeah, this is the problem. We've got one person who will basically be in charge of deciding when there is a pandemic, where there is a pandemic, and the definition of a pandemic.
Yeah.
So I had the opportunity to ask a question to Ramesh Thakur, the former Assistant Secretary General of the UN, regarding these new pandemic treaties. And the question I asked him was, is there anything in the existing or proposed treaties, amendments, etc., that actually allows countries or individuals to hold the UN responsible if they get a pandemic response wrong? And the answer, of course, is a resounding no. There is no accountability mechanism. There is it adds such a distance between the ordinary people who have to obey what they're told and the people making those decisions that at the moment, when it's the federal government or the state government, accountability is extremely difficult. When it's the UN or the WHO, accountability is outright impossible.
And they decided on it, apparently. So people were celebrating that the treaty failed. They decided on the amendments at 9 p.m. before the whole thing was supposed to shut down. They were also supposed to have a 4-month allowable period whereby every country could read all these amendments. This did not occur. So apparently there will be some legal challenge to what has occurred.
Yeah. Unpopular opinion on this topic. I don't invest a lot of time in this WHO thing. Just like the Paris Accord, these are treaties, as Craig was alluding, that we can opt out on. Ultimately, at the end of the day, in order for these, I call them think tanks. People don't like me calling them think tanks. But in order for them to implement anything, they still need Aussie politicians to do it.
To pass legislation here.
And the last time I checked, unlike America, we do control our borders with regards to we don't have illegal immigration. We have a legal immigration problem, which we can fix with better politicians. But most importantly, we still have our vote. The referendum proved that 60 to 70% of people voting against the policy. We've got mandatory voting. There's a lot going for Australia, and at the end of the day, they still need our politicians that we still vote in order to do that. It's on us to apply ourselves politically. If these things get up, you will not see me hang up the coat the next day. You'll see me being like, all right, guys, I'll see you on Monday. I've already put together a plan of how we're going to move forward. At the end of the day, we can flip them the bird. And basically
Absolutely.
be like, even though Albo or whoever signed, Albo, who doesn't even have the majority of the country on his side, signed this, we're going to opt out, force majeure.
Joel, I think you're overlooking that both the Liberal and the Labor Party are agreeing to these treaties.
Yeah.
So you've got yes, that's technically true, but as long as you've got Liberal or Labor majorities in our federal parliament,
yeah,
they will just rubber stamp whatever the WHO says.
Well, this is the warning to the Liberal Party. This is a very well established pattern that's going on around the seas. Again, 5 years ago, I was laying bricks and I was steel tying and I was landscaping. I didn't know about this if it wasn't for watching Trump and watching Nigel and New Zealand and Canada. What we're seeing right now is a complete realignment of politics. We're seeing, Pierre Poilievre in Canada. He is now. They have a way to actually have a new leader. The membership vote for their Conservative Party leader. He is set to take the government at the next election there in Canada. Then you've got New Zealand. They've got a major party that's their Liberal Party, Conservative Party, that has some steel in their spine now because they've got people like Winston Peters and others in that couple Freedom Parties, Libertarian Party making that coalition up. The Deputy Prime Minister is Winston Peters. In the US, where I believe if it's a fair election, again, our vote's better than the Americans. If it's a fair election, Donald Trump's completely taken over the Conservative Party. Completely. The MAGA movement's thrown out the rhinos. And he's looking to be the leader of the free world at the end of the year, November 5th. And in the UK, Nigel Farage has a 5-year plan now. He's committed to running on the 4th of July. He says, we're going to be the second largest party. We won't be the ones that, I won't be the Prime Minister, but I'm committing to 5 years, this election and the next one, so that we can take back control of our country, execute Brexit in the right way. And he's realistic about this. And I totally think he's going to do it. Now, Peter Dutton, you can be that guy, or we can F around for a few more elections, and eventually it'll be forced out of your hands by the likes of Craig Kelly and others in these minor parties. And that's brings us to a nice, neat close to the show. Forces like this, journalists like Avi and Rukshan and others, commentators like those around the panel, and active people committed to educating the grassroots in this country, the activists. We're not going away. And thanks to COVID, we all found each other. So now you're very far away from the reinforcements in Europe, 14,000 Ks away from, the Middle East. You're kind of isolated here, and 60 to 70% of the country against you, as The Voice showed. It's a ticking time bomb. You can either set it right, or just as Nigel and the other countries are showing, we're going to set it right. Did you guys have any thoughts on that before I closed up?
No, thanks for having me.
I think it's been a good discussion. I hope you get
been great.
A lot of good feedback, Joel.
Yeah.
No, my pleasure. No, you too, Nat.
Fantastic
Absolutely.
start for a first show. Congratulations, Joel.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to having you guys back. I hopefully have Graham Hood and John Larder and one other next week and in the coming weeks.